Varsity Radio Saturday morning show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it. Weekend editions here at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt and Will Wilson is back in studio. Will's just spent the night. He spent the entire last 4 or 5 days doing his thing. We're streaming live here on StreamYard with ESPN Lincoln on Facebook and on Twitter, and just bopped in the head by my favorite offensive lineman. Jeremiaha Sirles is with us. It is that time of year. It is tee-off for Treasures time as the 9th annual golf tournament at Woodland Hills. Sirles, you are awesome. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you again. 2 weekends in a row.
I know,
two
man.
Different golf courses. I mean, we could make a habit out of this.
I think we just tour golf courses. It's the Sirles World Tour. Willie J had a little breakfast sandwich. They put cheese on it this morning. You're not a happy guy.
Yeah, I'm not a really big cheese guy, especially when it comes to those breakfast sandwiches. But I fought through it, guys. It's good.
What's the matter with you?
It's just how it is, man. I know I get a lot of crap for it, but it's just
rightfully so.
Yeah, but it was still tasty. I'll say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had the it wasn't quite midnight Taco Bell run, but it was about 10 o'clock. We had Junior had to pick Junior up from his girlfriend's.
Oh,
yeah.
Little 10 o'clock curfew?
Yeah. I had a whiskey with a buddy and picked up Junior and got him. He's like, Dad, Taco Bell.
What's the go-to Junior Taco Bell order?
What? It's going to run me $20. That's the go-to.
You could feed a family of like 8 for like $4 at Taco Bell.
I know.
I mean, well, it's inflation now, so probably more like 8. But
18,
we'll
right?
figure it out.
But Jeremiaha Sirles with us. Sirles, let's get caught up, man. It's great to see you again. We're at Woodland Hills, the 9th annual tee-off for Treasures, Tyson Treasure Chest fundraiser, and of course golf outing. And Sirles, let's start off with the story, my friend, about Tyson and his wonderful family, Austin and Liz, and just your connection. Let's let the listeners in if they're hearing about Tyson's somehow for the first time. But man, 9 years, you and your lovely wife Emma have been so just gracious and wonderful with your time, but it's really a part of who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I got a chance to actually meet Tyson when he and Austin and Liz came and toured the stadium when Tyson was very sick. So he was fighting pediatric brain cancer, which is why the whole foundation was created. He was able to come to the stadium, and we gave him a tour. It was me, Rex Burkhead, Taylor Martinez, Legate. They have a great picture from when we were able to come, and that visit really stuck with me. And so I was able to stay close with the family, with Liz and Austin. And when Tyson passed, it was one of those, when he passed, it was one of those where I had to reach out to Keith Zimmer and Life Skills and be like, I think I need to take a little break from the childhood cancer visits, because those are really starting to eat at me. And that kind of lit some conviction in me to stay close to Liz and Austin, and then got in the NFL and was able to then turn around and do what the NFL does best and give back. And started as just being a sponsor of the event, wasn't even part of the board or anything, and then eventually have worked our way up to Emma and I are both now on the board of Tyson's. And we just work every year, put the golf tournament on, build chests, toys. Austin build a big toy chest that we put in children's hospitals so that kids that are going through chemo or going through any type of cancer treatment or anything have a toy they can go grab, and it's new and it's something to play with and distract them, even if it's for 15 minutes. It's just a way to distract them. And so this now we're raising close to anywhere between 20 and 30 grand a year for this with the golf tournament, and just continue to put money into fighting this horrible disease.
Well, and you want to bring happiness to kids, and the story with Tyson and bringing blankets, bringing toys, and having that big treasure chest that they go to different hospitals that are part of the battle against pediatric brain cancer, and it's bringing joy and smiles to a kid's life during a really tough moment. And it's been a process that has been very blessed with just the amount of outreach and giving and the growth. of just what this has done for so many families and so many kids.
Yeah, and what's been so great is how many of my teammates and then even companies I'm associated with have rallied behind too. I mean, so Spencer Long will be out here again. He's been a sponsor of the event for 3-4 years. Brent Qualley's been a sponsor for 5 years. He actually won the Difference Maker Award. Him and Melissa won that last year, which was great for them. You know, Lazari's is still, they cater the food in every year.
Seth and Gregor's
are the best, right? And then, I mean, even companies like Kratos, the gym that I work at, they've rallied behind it. So it's just great to see when there's great causes and then you live in a great community like Lincoln and you surround yourself with a great community like people in Nebraska, how many people want to help and how many people want to be involved. And especially when it comes to diseases like pediatric brain cancer. I know we were Team Jack last weekend, it's the same thing, but this is a smaller organization, but it's got just as much support because it means just that much to people. And that's what really has been so cool for me to see how this thing grows throughout the community and how people every year come midsummer like, man, the golf tournament's happening again this year. It's like, hey, you better get it. We sold out in 30 minutes this year. So, I mean, if you're not a sponsor and you're not getting on the thing right away, you're not going to get a seat, which is just so cool to see. Because, I mean, I think we had like 12 our first year, 12 like teams, and now it's just selling out quickly and people are like, do you have any spots left? And it's a hard thing to say no, but at the same time it's just great to see how far this thing has come.
Jeremiaha Sirles with us, Husker NFLer and part of Tyson's treasure chest. You want to donate? You didn't get into the golf tournament this year. We're out at Woodland Hills, and just a phenomenal course. Great people out here. You can log on today, tysonstreasurechest.org, the 9th annual Tee-Off for Treasures. This is an incredible tournament. This is fun. This is a lot of fun. Golf tournaments rock anyway, but this is special because of some of the unique designs. I've had a chance to play on your and Spencer's team a couple of different times, and let's just say that the old tee-off from the Thrones, always entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
Where you have to sit down and...
We got a new golden toilet this year, too. It's not broken.
The old golden throne, you have to try and stripe it down the middle. But, Sirles, this is so wonderful with your outreach and just kind of a testament to you, your family, and your teammates with the outreach and what you've done to give back. I am going to keep you for 2 more seconds to talk a little football, bud. And we're 42 days away.
It's crazy.
What's this like for you if you go back in time? Always nervous energy with your career, be it either the NFL or Nebraska, or give me another week of decompress because it's just it's a sprint once camp gets going.
Once 4th of July hits, July 5th, you can see the dark cloud over the horizon that is training camp. It's just there, and it just ever keeps getting closer day in and day out. In college, you're kind of getting ready because you're just tired of summer school and tired of conditioning, and you're like ready to go do something, right? NFL's a little different because you're home, you're with your family, and it's like this big send-off. Versus college is kind of a seamless transition, But in college, you're just kind of ready to go because it marks the start of the next cycle, which is season. And that's what you work all other 8 months of the year for those 4 months to go out there and showcase all the work that you've done. And, I think this year there's going to be a lot of nervous energies because so many new faces, so many new coaches, so much new, right? So much uncertainty. And in a world that loves certainty, when you have a bunch of uncertainty, it can add a lot of emotion to it. So I'm really excited to kind of see what this Husker group has this year and what they're going to look like. But I think right now a lot of the players, you got some young guys that are hungry. You got some old guys that are like, oh, boy, here we go again. And then you got a bunch of new faces that are ready to prove themselves.
Sirles, one thing I really appreciated about your teams was the leadership and the backbone. And you guys truly had each other's backs. It wasn't just an offense or a deep. I mean, all 3 phases cared about one another, and that showed on the field. And that's my question. I think it's a lot of people's question here going into 2022. New isn't bad necessarily. New faces on the coaching staff, that's not a bad thing. New faces on 3rd and 8 off the edge in O'Shawn Mathis, not a bad thing. But new doesn't happen immediately. Right. That's my question here with your experience as a guy who's been a captain and also a voice on several teams. How can that get microwaved to the appropriate temperature here? So it's a good thing in Ireland, not a oh no thing in Ireland.
Yeah, I think that started when they got on campus. You don't just walk in and command respect. You walk in and you earn respect, regardless if you're a senior transfer or whatever it is. You're in a new environment. There's new culture set. There's new standards that you're walking into. And so, I think that a lot of that has to be earned through the off season, but so much of it is what do you do between the white lines? Because you can be a workout warrior all the live long day. You're not performing on the field. You're not going to get listened to. It's just that simple. Versus I know guys that were really quiet, really didn't. I think of a guy like Rex Burkhead. He wasn't a really rah, loud guy, but he got on the field and you just commanded respect. He commanded respect by the way he played the game and by the way he practiced. By the way, he showed up every single day to practice ready to go, right? So I think that's what you got to see is who in training camp is really performing well, who are guys rallying behind, who are guys going, okay, I want to play like him, or who's pulling guys with them. That's something that all has to happen rather quickly, like you said, because we did lose some leaders on the team. I think of guys like Austin Allen. I think of guys like Adrian Martinez. There's Ben Stilleys. Like, there's a lot of holes that are left to fill, but in that leaves opportunity for guys that maybe we're not sure are going to ready to take that role. I mean, who knows if all of a sudden we're talking about a guy that's like, oh, Feast is a leader, right? Like, there's a random guy that pops up that you're like, holy cow, look how big of a step Turner Corcoran's taken, or look how big of a step some of these guys are. Ramir Johnson's taken in the leadership role. We don't get to see these guys in that microwave like you've talked about during the offseason, but we'll actually get some looks at these guys come training camp and see really who's kind of in that next step.
Jeremiaha Sirles with us, Hail Varsity Radio weekend here. Tee-off for Treasures, the 9th annual Tee-off for Treasures. As here's the little man joining Big Daddy on the radio. We are here for the Tee-off for Treasures golf tournament, Hail Varsity Radio weekend. Sirles, last thought, and I'll let you get to your family. O-line, and that's some puzzle pieces to fit together. I really like the talent on the O-line, but it's got to be kind of figured out. I'm interested here what the ask is of this line, in your opinion, here with what Raiola and Whipple are gonna kind of get on the same page with here. What's the mentality? What's the identity?
Well, first of all, you got to find the 5 guys. You got to find you got to find those 5, and you got to find them early. I don't think this is a line that you can wait to be like, well, we'll wait till 2 weeks before to name our group. Like with a young group, especially when you're talking about now missing Nuri, who was the oldest guy in the room. You're now saying this young group has to come together, and we have to find the 5 to start them working together in a big way. Because with Whipple offense, it is a little bit of a downhill. It is a little bit of a wide zone. It's a little bit of everything, and it's not
pro style.
It's a little bit more pro style, right? Which is a lot of combinations on the front of double teams and working together with your zone schemes and working together with your doubles and your passing off games and all those things in the pass game. So, I think that the big thing's going to be continuity. And the other thing's going to be staying healthy. This is not a group that can afford any injuries. And I hate saying that, but it's just, I'll knock on wood here, but it's just the truth. You look at the depth of this offensive line, and it is scarce, to say the least. You're 1 or 2 injuries away from being in a big, big problem. So getting those guys healthy, making sure they're right. But really, it's just about being competitive and just being aggressive. I think that you heard a lot of that coming out of spring ball, running off the ball and all that. That's great. Now continue to do it and build off of that. I think if you can do that, we'll be just fine. And then really it's pass protection. Last year our tackles weren't very good. It's pretty simple. It wasn't a good showing by Bryce Benhart, Turner Corcoran. Teddy showed good, but there's still very small sample size of him. We can't anoint him king just yet. And, I think that those 2 guys on the edge have to make big jumps, whoever they may be, because I don't care who's throwing the ball back there. If they only have 2 or 3 seconds in college, NFL, sure, Tom Brady can get it, but in college, you need 3 seconds or more, and that's a big ask for some of these guys that didn't have great years last year.
Do you think is there a 1,000-yard rusher, assuming this line comes together in that running back room?
I think that if they run the ball like they want to with Whipple, then I think there's a chance. I think it is for – the only reason I hesitate to say yes for sure is because I think that's a little bit running back by committee. I don't necessarily know if you're going to have a guy early that just takes it by storm and has those early couple 150, 160-yard rushing games early in the season, which then propels to that 1,000-yard season, right? I think you might see guys like Ramir and Grant and some of these other guys that are in there like, okay, he had 70, he had 60, he had 55, and so it might not be a true 1,000-yard rusher, but I do think we're going to have the most rushing yards than we've had in a long time as a unit.
Jeremiaha Sirles with us, Tee-off for Treasures, 9th annual Tee-off for Treasures Golf Classic here at Woodland Hills. And we're talking a little football, and we're telling you about Tyson's Treasure Chest, and it's a golf tournament you need to be a part of, you want to be a part of. And Sirles, you and your family are wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks to all the folks that come out yet again to help fight against pediatric brain cancer and get all those toys and blankets and warm moments in that treasure chest that get to go to different cancer hospitals around the country, children's hospitals. We'll spend a bit more time here. Next hour, we'll check in with Brandon Vogel. We're streaming live, ESPN Lincoln on Facebook and also on ESPN Lincoln's Twitter as we're on the road this weekend. We'll check in with the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp. Some more thoughts on the offensive line as we'll rewind coming up with Rob Zatechka. Dr. Rob will join us, that earlier conversation. Sirles, who is going to claim the crown today at the Tee-Off for Treasures? You've had some good teams, but a little birdie tells me you've been just close. There's going to be that Tiger moment for somebody, right? Walking up 18.
I mean, last year the winner shot a 39. So
oh wow,
there's a lot of cheats. You can buy your championship here,
I would
which
say
is fine for me because you buy your championship, it's more money to pediatric brain cancer. So buy all the cheats.
So contribute, get creative accounting wise.
Exactly.
Contribute
buy your
to win.
prize.
Buy your prize, brother. I'll let you get to it. Thanks again, man.
Hey, go Big Red.
Yep, there he is. Jeremiaha Sirles. Can find him on Twitter. No, not this morning. We'll get a GBR next time. Take care, guys. See ya. It's Jeremiaha Sirles at Sirles71_HSKR is where you find him. And just real quick from a mission standpoint, with Tyson's Treasure Chest, their goal is to put happiness back into the hands of children fighting cancer and illness, and they achieve this by creating a large toy chest shaped like a treasure chest, and they're filled with toys and blankets and stuffed animals and other items. And this chest donated to select hospitals that treat childhood cancer and diseases. And all the chests are handmade by Liz and Austin Chambers. They're constructed from solid oak and other wonderful woods that are stained and sealed that'll last a lifetime. And each chest is carved by Liz to ensure how much love and grace goes into them. How are you? So this is just a wonderful event, and we are grateful to be out here. Let's take a time out. We'll get to the rewind here coming up as we'll hit on the offensive line a little bit more. Big thanks to Jeremiaha Sirles for having us out here. Also Woodland Hills with Tee-Off for Treasures. Brandon Vogel next hour. Gary Sharp next hour. Dr. Rob Zatechka to talk O-line. It's on the way. Weekend edition. Hail Varsity. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Hello, listener. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to let you know about a special deal just for listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast. We're offering $10 off the annual subscription price. That means that you can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Back with Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery, with Chris Schmidt and Mark Cranick.
Back with you, it's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Let's talk some lines of scrimmage. We welcome in the good doctor and his podcast with Travis Justice, been going on for a number of years, the Doc Talk podcast. We say hi to Dr. Rob Zatechka. Dr. Rob, how are we doing today?
I'm well, a little warm. It's a little warmer today than I thought it was going to be. So, but I mean, it's July in Nebraska, so that's what you get.
That's what you do get. We always get into a beer conversation at some point during the interview. We'll get there in a minute. The topic of fake IDs have come up, and Elijah, who you talked to just moments ago, his father got on Twitter and kind of, outed him in the process about Elijah suddenly one day was from Missouri, and this helped him navigate. I got to ask you, and you don't have to incriminate yourself, but I'm wondering.
He made me incriminate myself, so you better incriminate yourself.
Well, my question is did guys on the football team in your era have to jack with a fake ID, or if there was a little window between workouts, could you go down to your favorite watering hole and just get in? Is that membership has its privileges type deal?
Oh, boy. You know what? Most of those places in downtown Lincoln were pretty tight on that. So, if you didn't have okay, let me preface this by saying I never did have a fake ID.
Me neither.
But most of those places were pretty tight on checking stuff. So they didn't want to get in trouble. You always had undercover police doing periodic checks as well. So you kind of had to play it a little bit safe, otherwise coach would get ticked. Funny story, there was a guy on one of our kickers, actually. You know what, I'm completely outing him on the radio here, but...
Did he wear number 47?
No, he did not wear 47.
Okay.
So, but one of our kickers, his freshman year, made a fake ID, needed to get the little plastic coating put on it, which they would do at places like Kinko's or any other copier center. So he actually walked into Kinko's and handed over his fake ID that he had made, that he just needed to get that plastic laminate put on there, and asked the guy to laminate it. And the guy goes, "Oh, okay, hold on." And he takes it, goes into the back of the store, and doesn't come out for several minutes. And the player in question starts getting nervous, so he starts kind of hollering at the guy like, "Hey, come back here, give me my ID." And he said the Kinko's employee finally comes out, tells him, "Hey, I got to have you wait here. I can't give you the ID back, but the police are on their way." And so the guy panics, runs out of the Kinko's, jumps in his car, and hauls back to the dorms, thinking he's avoided an arrest for manufacturing a fake ID. The problem is that he drove this bright red sports car, and I don't remember if it was a Trans Am or an old Pontiac Firebird, something like that, but picture, we'll say, a bright red, like 1989 Trans Am with a personalized license plate, Kicker 1.
Oh, my God. He had Kicker 1 on the plates?
He did, which was pretty ballsy for a freshman kicker. But it also made him incredibly easy to track down, because all the Kinko's guy had to do was look out the window, and it's like, all right, bright red Trans Am, Kicker 1, got it. I'll just let the police know that. So the guy said he got back to his dorm room, and it was probably the old Harper Schramm Smith dorms, I think, gets in his dorm room, and he said it was maybe 20 minutes later, there was a knock on the door, and it was the Lincoln Police Department there to issue him a citation for trying to manufacture a fake ID.
So was that punishable by stairs? What did because Dan Young was special teams, correct?
Yeah, I can't. I got to be honest. I don't remember. I know the coaching staff put him through the paces. I don't remember what the punishment was, but I know it wasn't pleasant. I'm still. Was this the kicker from Texas? It was not Byron Bennett.
Okay, I'm okay. So I'm 0 for 2. I'm 0 for 2. It's not Stiggy. It's not Byron Bennett. And
yeah, it's not Mike Stiggy, the strongest punter in the world.
I'm 0 for then, man. I don't remember who was kicker 1 back in.
Well, that's probably okay, because he was not kicker 1 at the time.
Rob Zatechka with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. So we good. We got the fake ID stuff out of the way. Let's dive into some Nebraska football. And Rob, let me ask you this first and foremost. What do you believe about the offensive line? What do you believe they can do? I'm serious. I mean, I know that's a super broad, but man, there's so many puzzle pieces that got to fit together.
Yeah, and it's a good question, man. We've talked about this before a little bit. The biggest thing I have is that I've got a massive amount of uncertainty. And it's across the board. And it's gotten more uncertain here when you lose Newelly with the drug test. So, I mean, it's like you kind of go across the line. You kind of felt like we had a little bit of sort of a pretty good setup here where he had Prohaska at one tackle, Ben Harder Corcoran at the other tackle, probably Corcoran, what it seemed like. You had Newelly at one guard, you had Trent Hickson at center, and then maybe either Ben Hart or maybe Brock Bando at the other guard spot. So you kind of had a little bit of this lineup that you could look at and say, okay, we got some known commodities here. We got some guys who played pretty darn well last year for good chunks of the season. Well, all of a sudden, now Teddy's coming back from a pretty bad knee injury. That's a question mark until you get him out on the field and you really see what he can do in a game situation. I mean, I don't care if anybody looks like a rock star during practices leading up to the first game. Until he gets out there on that field in Ireland against a defensive end from Northwestern, you're not going to know what kind of productivity he's going to have on that repaired knee. And you're not going to – and the other thing is you've always got a question. You got a guy who suffered a pretty bad injury. How well does he come back from that in terms of just overall durability? Is this a guy that's going to potentially re-injure that knee? Is this a guy that is going to injure the other knee? There's always that durability question when you see a guy coming back from an injury like that. So that's a huge question mark. Losing Newelly was a big one. I was a huge fan of the guy. He's an absolute brawler, and I love that about him. I thought he was next to Cam Jurgens. I thought he was the most aggressive offensive lineman last season. Actually, I thought Teddy was actually pretty damn aggressive too. But losing Newelly, I think that's a pretty big loss in my opinion. And so again, it goes back to who's going to step in and fill that hole. My assumption right now is, assuming they're healthy, is that you're going to see Ben Hart and Brock Bando at the guard spots, unless somebody like Brant Banks steps up. You got some of the transfer guys like, is it Thomas from Oklahoma State? Hunter Anthony from Oklahoma State.
Anthony and Williams from Northern Colorado.
Yeah, and Williams is, he's an Omaha North kid. I remember watching him in high school, and the kid I thought he was an excellent prospect at the time. He's a huge, huge human being. And if he can come in, has the footwork, has the aggressiveness, Williams is a guy that I'd love to see step in because I've watched him play in high school, and I really do think he's a guy that can play at this level and play very well at this level. I've watched clips of Hunter Anthony, the Oklahoma State transfer. I've watched clips of him play. He's had some spurts where he's done really well, where he started at both tackle and guard. And so he's got the ability. It's not like Oklahoma State's a bad team. They're a very good football team, and the fact that he spent time starting for him, the kid's got to have some ability. But again, I'll be curious to see if we see those guys at one or even both those guard spots with Newelly now gone. I still think Hickson's going to be the center. I haven't really heard anything coming out of Lincoln to change my mind on that. And quite frankly, I think the kid's a little bit of an underrated football player overall in his career at Nebraska. I don't want to say there's been a knock against him because he was originally a walk-on, but sometimes that can change a coach's perception on a guy if they're not a scholarship guy. You get maybe a little bit of a subconscious bias that the guy couldn't be that good because he was originally a walk-on. But I think Hickson's going to would in fact actually be a solid center. And then it comes down to that other tackle spot with Corcoran, maybe Benhart, but it sounds like they've kind of liked Corcoran more so than Benhart once Prohaska stepped into that left tackle spot.
Rob Zatechka's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Rob, there's still a lot of question marks surrounding this offensive line, but one thing I've been hearing and one thing I believe to be true is the fact that this offensive line under Raiola lost a lot of weight during spring ball with the intention of building it back up this summer. I just want to get your take on how that strikes you. If some of these guys lost 20, 30 pounds during spring ball before being built back up, what do you think that means the plan is for Raiola this summer and getting into fall camp?
I think he wants guys, and that's the thing. I'll be curious to see how the offense looks, because I think he wants guys who can move. I think he wants guys who have a little more speed and power. You don't have to be the 340-pound offensive lineman in order to succeed at this level, but you've got to have strength. You've got to have explosiveness. You do need some size. But, I mean, I thought the two best offensive linemen on the team last year, when healthy, was Teddy and Cam. Mm-hmm. And Teddy was probably, I don't think he was much more than 300 pounds, 310 pounds maybe. He looked like he was a power forward in basketball because the kid's like 6'10". But he played very aggressively, and especially taking his height into consideration, his ability to drop his level, bring his hips down close to the ground, and get himself low enough to take on interior defensive linemen, I thought was amazingly impressive. He was a very aggressive run blocker at a weight that you wouldn't normally think. I mean, quote-unquote, only 300 pounds or so. Normally you think of those hardcore run blockers as kind of these 325, 330-pound road graders. And so for Teddy to be that aggressively effective run blocker, I thought was impressive at his weight. Cam Jurgens played, I mean, Cam really, over the course of the time that he played, he was always an effective blocker. I mean, it took him a year and a half to get the damn snaps down, but excluding the snap issues, his blocking ability was never in question. The guy was always a very explosive, very aggressive, very good blocker, and I thought that showed, and that's the reason he got drafted where he did. He maxed out. He might have been maybe 305 this past year, if that. I think he kind of hovered closer to around 295. But so you got a guy who, again, it's not that stereotypical 330-pound, just massive behemoth offensive lineman that you think that exists, that only exists here in the Big Ten. You see nobody smaller than that. That wasn't the case. Our two best run blockers might have been two of the lighter guys on that line. I don't think they have to have that size.
It's always fun to talk O-line, get some insight from an expert and a great player at Nebraska, part of that pipeline and national champion, the pride of Lincoln East, Dr. Rob Zatechka, as he's joining us here this second hour. Dr. Rob, we won't keep you too long, and don't forget to check out Rob Zatechka's podcast with Travis Justice, the Doc Talk podcast. All the platforms that you get your podcasts on is where you can listen and find them. You guys crack a beer or two, correct, and talk all sorts of football. Yes, and it's a great dynamic because you're a Husker and Travis is a Hawkeye, and you get along, and you've gotten along for years, and it's really cool, dear friends. And so Nebraska football with Raiola here is going to have new techniques. That's what Coach Frost has talked about. What does that mean to you? New techniques. What could be the ask for this offensive line to be more effective? And another part of this too. Do you have an identity in mind Rob, what is going to be the go-to for this football team? I know Whipple loves to throw it, but the O-line's such a domino for run game, pass game, and we know protection was an issue a year ago.
It was, and I think you are going to have that pass protection step up. I think the overall thing is you're just going to need to see a lot more aggression out of this offensive line, a lot more of an attacking mindset. Now, just because you're passing the ball, pass protection does not have to be passive. And when we played, we were trying to beat guys up even on pass protection. You were constantly looking for opportunities to get hits on guys. If you were the free lineman in a pass protection scheme, man, you're looking down to the guy on the guard. If you're the guard, you're looking out to the guy on the tackle. If you're the center, you're looking at those D linemen lined up over the guards. You got a chance there to take a free shot on a guy and get a hit, decleat a guy in midair when he's jumping up to try and knock down the pass. You can be aggressive during pass protection. It does not have to be passive, and I think that's got to be a mindset change. On the run blocking, we've been hearing about how Raiola wants to switch over to a more aggressive style of run blocking. There's kind of two schools of thought with run blocking. One is that you sort of screen off the defensive line and sort of step sideways between them and the running lane. It's a little more passive. You're really not trying to push the guy off the ball. You're just trying to get between the guy and where the ball carrier is going to be, with the logic that, hey, if the defender has to go through you, that's going to be the harder way to defend a play. The other school of thought is you take the defensive lineman and you're literally going to try and physically move them backwards. You're going to move the defensive lineman away from the play. You're not necessarily going to put yourself between the D lineman and the ball. You're just going to try and push them backwards. That's kind of the style we ran when I played. If you go and look at a couple of teams that run that style, Iowa and Wisconsin are two very good examples of that. The first style tends to be the screening the guy off style, tends to be a little bit more popular. You see a lot of NFL coaches teaching that. And it's an effective system if you've got NFL caliber offensive linemen, because you got to have guys who can hold a position and move with the defender. And not everybody has NFL talent. That's the problem with that technique. I always kind of preferred the more aggressive technique. If you could move a guy backwards even 6, 8, 10 inches on a play, you know what? You get a little bit of movement on one play, you're going to wear that defender out. And that style, the more aggressive run blocking where you're trying to move the guy backwards, it tends to fatigue defenses more. And that's one of the things I always liked about it, was that aspect. And I like watching that style more. It's a more aggressive style. You see the offensive linemen kind of getting after it a little bit. And if you got guys that are explosive, are strong, have that strength and aggression, it's a fun offense to watch. I'm hoping that's what Whipple and Raiola are going to do. And like I said, I'm fine with a guy like Whipple who wants to put the ball in the air. Hey, if Casey Thompson or Chuba or any of the other quarterbacks on the roster, if they can sling it and they got time to do so, go for it. But that doesn't mean you don't have to that doesn't mean you can't be aggressive up front. You can still be an aggressive pass blocker.
Well, I just, whenever you talk about that reminds me of the Big Ten as a whole, almost something like Minnesota's been doing the past couple of years, where they get that physicality up front. You can mix in the passing game when it becomes necessary, but that get 6, 8 inches of movement, if you only get that, but you get a 200-something pound running back coming downhill, falling forward, that's 3-4 yards. That's Big Ten football right there.
Well, it is, and I think we've seen that at Minnesota. I mean, they've had a handful of different coaches over the last decade or so here. But if you look at Minnesota, they've gone to a more kind of that again, I hate pigeonholing one or two teams on this, but they've gone to, well, when it's not Nebraska, but Minnesota's gone to more of that Wisconsin or Iowa-style run blocking. And this is going back to the Jerry Kill era, et cetera. I mean, we're going back 10, 12 years here that Minnesota's done this. And that's where you started to see Minnesota, all of a sudden they weren't a laughing stock anymore. People are looking over there going like, that's a bunch of 300-pound bodies on those old lines at Minnesota. They're moving guys around. They're getting after it up front. And all of a sudden they're going to bowl games. They're causing fits for other teams, and all of a sudden Minnesota's a competitive team. They're not a pushover. They're not that instant win on their opponent's schedule anymore. And you can, I mean, God, I make fun of row the boat. I mean, I get it. Everybody does. But I mean, you go back more than 12 years ago, Minnesota was kind of a laughing stock. They were the Kansas football of the Big Ten. They're not anymore, and it had to do with their offensive style and kind of this desire to, hey, we're going to have a bunch of big bodies up front. We're going to establish some power football. Iowa's established power football. Wisconsin, they established power football. You look at any good team, they've got a power run game that works. Part of the reason Ohio State's so good is that when they need to pound you up front, they can do it. Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, those good SEC teams can pound you up front with huge athletic offensive lines, and they can move the ball.
Rob, it was a mentality you guys had, and it sounds like that mentality may return with more of an aggressive mindset to be firing forward versus I don't want to say passive, but more of that zone scheme you were touching on. Rob, a couple of minutes. Last thought. Dr. Rob Zatechka with us here, Husker Hall of Famer and part of the pipeline. When we talk identity, when push comes to shove, do you worry about balance, or do you think Whipple will be able to run the football when he has to run it? That's been an issue with Nebraska for a few years.
I hope there's a degree of balance, because if you become one-sided at all, I mean, you become a little easier to defend. If a team, and that's the thing, you don't have to run all the time, but you got to be able to run well.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line, is that you have to be able to run the ball when you need to and when you want to. And so if they pass the ball 2/3 of the time, fine. It's just you got to be able to line up and effectively run it so the opponent still has to – they can't just drop those safeties deep. They can't just take a linebacker out and drop another defensive back in there and run nickel all day to shut down the pass. You've got to keep them a little bit honest, and you've got to be able to show them that, hey, when we want to run, we can run just fine. And that's got to be a part of that offense. And so it's – like I said, it doesn't have to be a numerical balance in terms of, hey, 50% run, 50% pass, or 60% run, 40% pass, whatever. But it has to be a capability balance. Your effectiveness at running has to be as effective as you are passing. And if you're able to do that, you're going to be fine.
Well, we are close to kickoff, less than 50 days, I think 45 days or so. And excited for it. We'll be headed to Ireland for live shows. Excited for that. Rob Zatechka with us, Husker great. Rob, we'll make our way up to Omaha soon, probably for a live show at the Hail Varsity Club. And I'd love to get you your favorite frosty pint, my friend, as a thank you for all the times you do come on, bud.
Oh, heck yeah. I'm all for it.
Hey, you take care, and it was great to spend time with you. And thanks for the insight as always, bud.
Absolutely. Hey, you guys have a great rest of the day.
Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we produce, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Early to rise with Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Here's Chris Schmidt and Mark Kranick.
All right, we snagged him right before tee-off. Tee-off for Treasures, JP 96 Kicks, my friend. Hey, thank you for what you're doing. And the 9th annual Tee-off for Treasures, JP.
It's been fantastic. 9 years running, 4 years a sellout. And it's just a great crowd. We lucked out. The weather's going to be a little bit humid, but 84 isn't
Sweat
bad
out the bush life.
Exactly. That's what people are going to have to do. But it's a good time.
I would love to, in a compressed manner, I know you got to get to the tee box, but just real quick, JP, your association with Tyson and of course, what the great folks with Tyson's Treasure Chest do.
Yeah, I met Liz and Ty. He was a little boy going through chemotherapy, and huge Jason Aldean fan. So we created a campaign on social media to try to get Ty to Jason, and it took months and lots of messages and shared messages and videos. And finally one day, Jason Aldean tweeted out a video, said, "Hey, buddy, I want to see you in Atlanta." And so he set it up to go out to Atlanta. They went to a Braves game, his favorite team, got to meet Jason Aldean, got walked around by the crew there, and they went to the ocean, and then a week later he passed away. And it was meant to happen the way it did, and it was a good thing, and it kind of connected everybody the way it had with Jeremiah and Emma and Randy and Liz and Austin and Danelle and the crew that are a part of the board, and then the family, and then the friends of the family, and then the Husker family, and it's blown up to what it is now, and we're excited for this year, and we're ready for the 10th anniversary next year, and it's going to be huge, and I'll let you know ahead of everybody else, because I haven't told anybody out there yet. As part of the 10th year, we're going to do some really special things with the golf tournament. We were also adding a bowling event at Sun Valley Lanes. It'll be in February, and this is more family oriented, so you can bring your kids out and get your team of 6 or whatever and bowl and also help out the cause. Sure. And with the Tyson Treasure Chest, filling those toys and tablets and blankets and whatever the kids need on the Ford Children's Hospital in Omaha, so they have something to take their mind off chemotherapy or whatever treatments they're going through. And we want to expand that. Unfortunately, the pandemic kind of slowed that down a little bit, but we wanted to expand to Minneapolis and to Denver and to Kansas City, so we're working on that, and that's what we're going to hopefully be able to do with the 10th anniversary of the golf tournament next year, and then bowling starting out.
Well, that's JP 96 Kicks, and his heart is just so big with this. The 10th annual tee-off next year, the 9th annual tee-off for Treasures. You go swing away.
We'll do our best.
The microphone. Yeah. Thank you, buddy.
Best of luck to your boy playing ball today.
Oh, yeah. Junior is off to West Side here about 3 o'clock, and we shall see. We are going to need a live chicken and lots of Joe Boo's rum. There we go. JP on 96 Kicks. Awesome to get caught up with him and a little bit of the backstory with Tyson and Tyson's Treasure Chest. We are on the doorstep here. We'll get caught up with Sports Center, and then we will dive into Hour 2. We're live here at Woodland Hills. Tee-off for Treasures, the 9th annual Tee-off for Treasures, Tyson'sTreasureChest.org. What a wonderful organization and cause. Great people. And just such love in the area right now. We will get to Sports Center. Brandon Vogel from HailVarsity.com and magazine joining us in Hour 2 to talk some fall camp that's around the corner. It's time for Sports Center. Gary Sharp on the way. Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcast is part of what we do at Hail Varsity. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday Morning Show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Kranick.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Great to have you in. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. We're out here at Woodland Hills, the 9th annual Tee-off for Treasures, Tyson TreasureChest.org Golf Classic. Excited to be here back-to-back weekends here out on a golf course on a Saturday. That's awesome. And two amazing causes. We are thinking about Tyson today. Good stuff from Jeremiaha Sirles in hour one. Also caught up with Dr. Rob Zatechka and part of the board, JP from 96 Kicks, and his wonderful relationship and story about Tyson. Into hour two, 42 days from kickoff. The countdown continues. We welcome in managing editor with HailVarsity.com and magazine, Brandon Vogel, with us at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter is where you find him. Vogel, I love the backdrop. Every time I comment on it, I'm a broken record. But the football office of one Brandon L. Vogel. How you doing this morning, man? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing well. How are you?
We're good. It's, dare I say, two-a-day muggy.
Yeah.
two a day muggy out here. And you know what? It's cloudy. It's a little bit of a nice breeze. The bush light is cold, and they've been loaded up on all the golf carts. But Sirles, pretty good week for Nebraska fans when we think of some insight right before the calm before the storm, with camp getting underway and media days and all that. But quite a rotation of Nebraska coaches taken to the airwaves between Whipple and Mickey and Dawson and Fisher. And I want to get your take here on the defensive line. I about said offensive line. We'll get there as well. But defensively, I'm interested in your take with, is there maybe more than one potential star to emerge? We've seen guys contribute. We've seen guys grow. And the Hail Varsity Yearbook has that story of growth with Garrett Nelson. Really cool. But could this be, dare I say, a banner year for Nebraska on the defensive line when it comes to pass rush and getting after the quarterback? Do you feel like that might be a good futures bet here for Nebraska to do something they haven't done in a while, and that's consistently get pressure? Do you like the options that Coach Dawson has?
Yeah, I do. It's interesting on the pass rushing front. I'm actually working on something here coming up in the next couple of days for watch list season. But a couple of years back, I sort of in fun, but sort of seriously, decided to try and coin the term the Sioux line, which is as we all well remember, Ndamukong Suh had 7 tackles for loss, including 4.5 sacks against Texas just in one game. Since that time, 11 Huskers have hit those numbers in a season. So, and I mean, when you think about it, being able to get in the backfield and being able to pressure the quarterback is important. Teams that do that can make things pretty difficult on opposing offenses. What I think is interesting about 2022 is, so in the past, I think, Khalil Davis was the last one to hit that in his final season at Nebraska. JoJo Domann was close. But you've really only had probably one option to hit that. This year, I feel like I could actually do a watch list because you've got Nelson, who I think is a good bet. O'Shawn Mathis could be a good bet. Caleb Tanner has been getting a little bit of off-season buzz for that. Now, there's not going to be enough TFLs and sacks to go around for all of them to get there, although Nebraska has had 2 in a season once. I'm forgetting what year it was off the top of my head, but it has happened one time where they got 2 players over those thresholds, 7 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. And I think it was during one of the Randy Gregory years, and somebody else got there as well. So I'll write that all up, and that'll be coming on the site soon enough. But talking about the D-line, it's been a while since I can remember where you had 3 guys that you legitimately felt like, okay, I could see this guy being a problem for opposing quarterbacks.
Brandon Vogel's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. We're here at Woodland Hills, Tee-Off for Treasures, 9th Annual Golf Classic, at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. I don't know about you. I don't take it for granted anymore, but we had a pretty sweet run of disruptors and difference makers, and I just marvel at this stacking of NFL hellraisers, going back to Noonan, going to Broderick, going to Mike Kroll, going to Wistrom, to Rucker, to Dwayne Harris, and I'm out of order, but I mean you had a decade plus run. Here's Vanden Bosch. Okay, I mean you had a run of guys that would get you 5 to 9 sacks. Christian Peter had a year where he had 7.5 sacks. As an interior lineman, and then you had the mother of all seasons where Sue put up incredible numbers, and then by the way, his partner in crime Jared Crick was really, really good as well. He was an All-American, and then it just stopped, and then you were able to get a guy like Randy Gregory in, and even the year Eric Martin had. I mean, Eric Martin was a converted linebacker, and he was close to a double-digit sack guy. I mean, he was really big for that Nebraska team, I think, in 2013. So I think he had Randy and Emart, and I might be off here, but I think they teamed up, or at least you went from one to the other. You were able to replace an All Big Ten TFL sack performer with a guy like Randy Gregory. What is a good number for the defensive line? What's Alabama? What's bad? What's average? I think back to Carricker and Jay Moore leading the nation in sacks with John Blake's defensive line in 2005. That defense was really, really underrated. I'm not asking for that if I'm a Nebraska fan, but what's a good number, Vogues, in totality here with TFLs and sacks?
Yeah, it's tough for me to know off the top of my head, but I can put it to you this way. So in 2019, when I did that Sioux Line post and looking at how often a Nebraska player had got there, I also looked at, so that year, so again, 7 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks for an individual. So that year, Michigan and Michigan State, I think, were probably the best defenses in the Big Ten. Michigan had 2 players hit that threshold. Michigan State had 1. I think it was Alabama Clemson in the national title that year, and they had, I think, 3 and 4. So you're thinking about that in terms of sacks, like if you get above 30, you're generally going to be probably top third of the country. And, above 30, that's a little less than 3 a game over a 12-game regular season. But it may not sound like a lot, but if you're getting that many actual sacks, so 2.5 a game or whatever it pencils out to be, you're also probably getting and affecting the quarterback quite a bit. And high sack teams are almost by default going to be high tackle for loss teams. So that number of 30, 35, maybe if you want to be truly like top 20 is probably where you need to be.
You just need one guy, Vogues, to break through, and then it can trickle down to the rest of the line. So maybe a guy like Garrett Nelson has 8 or 9 this year, which would be incredible. But he's also getting paid attention to a lot on 3rd and 8, which means one of the other 3 guys can go eat, and that's also super important. As high level as passing is in college football now, and you still need to run to win and run when you have to. That's obvious, and so Nebraska's run defense has steadily got better, but it has been tough for this defense to live out on that island and cover for 3 minutes when there's no consistent pressure. But I think let's turn our attention from Garrett to O'Shawn. We talked earlier this week about O'Shawn's Jeep from Woodhouse. Yes, it is a free shout-out Saturday, forgive me. But he is proven, and let's talk a little bit here about his transition from the Big 12 to the Big 10. And there's different reputations on each league, but body type and athleticism is still pretty constant. I mean, that translates wherever you play. He's going to be big. He's going to need to be big. And as we look at O'Shawn Mathis here, is it what he can do for the rest of the guys, or do you expect him to kind of take the bull by the horns if you're Nebraska and go eat himself on Saturdays? What's most effective for him, in your opinion, here when it comes to helping this defense? What's that path?
Yeah, it's tough to say because of what you mentioned, that Big 12 to Big 10 transition. And, for Mathis, he kind of broke out and had a really big 2020. And then in 2021, TCU's defense wasn't as good, first of all. But also he got a lot more attention, which is really interesting about this because that probably would have been Garrett Nelson for Nebraska this year. But now you've also got Mathis, and you've also got Tanner, who, we'll see. We've seen some pretty good flashes from him. So it's a pretty good compliment. I think it gives them some time. It gives Mathis some time if there is an adjustment period to the Big Ten, and just a different style of football, probably a different size of linemen. I mean, we're talking like, an inch and a half and maybe 10 pounds, but over the course of the season, just seeing bigger linemen, and I assume they're bigger. I haven't looked recently than the Big 12 on average, but I feel pretty confident in that. So it might give him time, that the fact that he's not replacing Garrett Nelson. They've got kind of these three top guys that you point to as their potential pass rushers. And they should all be able to help one another. I mean, and we'll see how they're going to line this up and who's playing where and how they get creative with that. But, it almost looks like, okay, if Mathis comes in and is the player he was at TCU and Nelson builds off of last year, it might leave a lot of opportunities for someone like Caleb Tanner. Which works. It doesn't matter who gets the sacks. Well, it matters to the players, but it doesn't matter to Nebraska's bottom line who gets them. You just want to see that total get up there.
Let's talk interior for a minute. Brandon Vogel with us. So we're talking about the edge. Well, I like Ty Robinson this season to progress. And listen, you go from a contributor that got some confidence during the COVID year to, all right, dude, you're a starter, go rock and roll. And that's not easy to as young as he was, to go kill it. And he played good football. I think he can play great football this year because he's got a little experience under his belt. We always talk about the experience factor. And then you bring Wynn in. And don't forget a Devin Drew. I mean, this is shaping up to be a lot of fun if you're a Nebraska fan, potentially, on 3rd and 7.
Yeah, it is. I think Ty Robinson is poised to have a pretty good season. I mean, we've seen him, we even saw him last year as be one of those guys that, on media availabilities, they'd put him out there. And he's a guy who's comfortable talking about it. So you feel pretty good about his leadership. And he needs to be that. I mean, he's basically the known entity Nebraska has coming back on that defensive line. I'm really high on Devin Drew this year. Wrote something this week looking at transfers, their production at their previous stops, their production at their new stops, specifically at Nebraska. And Devin Drew put up some really, really solid numbers for a Texas Tech defense. I'm banking on that level of production coming to Nebraska. He's a big guy, still going through, like with Mathis, that Big 12 to Big 10 transition. So there'll be a little bit there, but I expect Nebraska to get a lot of quality snaps out of him. And it's tough for those guys who are in the interior. You don't see him show up a ton on the stat sheet, but they can still be doing a really good job and doing what they need to do. Wynn's a little bit more of a wild card for me. And, we all know, like, he played at Alabama. He wasn't one of their top line guys, but it's Alabama. So, what does that mean for his transition here? I think Nebraska will end up getting a bunch of quality snaps out of him too. Hopefully everybody stays healthy up there because the depth is a little bit of a question. I know Dawson spent a lot of time talking about Nash Hutmacher and gave a pretty clear picture of where he needs to go from being kind of maybe the best weight room guy on the team to translating that to the field. So you've got 4 options there that I think I at least feel pretty good to optimistic about.
Bogues, do you feel better about the line with these new faces than hypothetically if it was the same old faces that transferred out? Again, no shade on the kids that moved on. God love them. But did Nebraska upgrade potentially? We'll be able to talk in December if that's a yes or a no. But if you're hedging a bet, do you think? I love what they've got in here, quite honestly. You've got some guys that have played quite a bit of football, and you have some guys that are waiting to play quite a bit of football, but they've not missed football due to injury.
Yeah, of those transfers up front, I think obviously the toughest one to replace was going to be Casey Rogers. And, his experience in this defense, his experience at Nebraska, and experience in the Big Ten is just hard to replicate. Some of those other transfers up there had seen some spot duty, hadn't quite been full-time starters, but looked like they would have a shot at it this year if they'd stayed in Lincoln. So, Rogers, I don't know if I'm ready to say, well, they upgraded over that. But I think they got as close as they could. Like I said, I think Devin Drew, if he comes in and does what I think he's capable of, is going to be a really, really solid part of that line. He's going to be a player that I think we're talking about in November of that was the right pickup. That was the right guy for this. And I think Wynn has that potential too. It's just we've seen a little bit less of him. So did Nebraska upgrade? I think they got back to where they needed to be, is what I'm comfortable going with at this stage without having seen those guys in a Husker uniform.
Brandon Vogel's with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. Vogues, we'll get you out of here on this, but I want to spend some time on running backs. And good story by Jacob Padilla this week, hailvarsity.com, on that running back room, that running back by committee potentially, or maybe some dude seizes it. And it is the Anthony Grant show. Maybe it's the A.J. Allen show. Maybe you have not a surprise, but some guys live up to their potential. And we were talking a little earlier with Sirles on this. Does Nebraska need a 1,000-yard rusher, or what's the number for you cumulatively that running back by committee needs to hit? I know we just talked about sacks and the Sioux line. Are they needing someone, that group to put up an Amir number in this Whipple offense, or can it be more bang for their buck when they do run the ball versus just the sheer number of attempts?
Yeah, I think it's going to have to be more bang for your buck, because we'll see. That's one of the big mysteries. We wrote something about that for tomorrow with Whipple. Is what's the run pass ratio going to be here? And I know it seems like, wow, that's a really kind of in the weeds question, but is Nebraska going to be a majority pass team in 2022? His Pitt offense last year threw the ball 54% of the time. Nebraska last year ran the ball 55% of the time. Maybe they'll meet in the middle. Maybe they'll be, the much coveted balance that every coach talks about, but it never really shakes out totally balanced that way. So in terms of numbers, I have a hard time seeing a 1,000-yard rusher at Nebraska without knowing who that top guy is going to be, or if there's going to be enough separation where somebody even gets enough carries to hit that 1,000-yard mark. I think if Nebraska's lead back gets to 800 yards without knowing, how the offense shakes out, I think that's a pretty good spot. 2018, which I think is best the run game looked for the Huskers under this current coaching staff, with Divine Azigbo averaging almost 7 yards a carry. You'll take that again if you can find it. I think they rushed for just over 2,500 yards, which that team still went 4-8. So it wasn't the answer to everything, but if you want a target, get to that number. And then the other key piece of this is, you're not going to get as much from the quarterback run game, I think, regardless of who ends up taking that job. Some running back is going to have to step in and take that.
Is that going to be weird for you? It's going to be weird for me, not seeing the quarterback from a design standpoint in the red zone, fake a handoff, make a cut, and dive into the end zone. Maybe it does happen. Maybe there's a Logan Smothers option game signing in the red zone. Maybe there's some Tebow package going on. But how crazy, if it's not a little zone read look, if it's a straight ace backfield formation, it'll be awesome. I mean, if they're getting 4.5 and it's 2nd and 5 and they can do what they want, but that'll be different, seeing the quarterback run because he's running for his life. It's not designed.
Yeah, it will. Whipple, in his radio appearance this week, when talking about Smothers, did mention that option run game, which kind of shocked me. I was like, oh, I thought that was I didn't expect that to be part of the plan, but I guess based on what they're talking about on the radio, it still is. Yeah, it's going to be weird. I think the number of 70-yard touchdown runs that we've seen at Nebraska in recent years is going to go down quite a bit, unless they come from the running backs, which hey, you'll take them. Like the sacks, doesn't matter who gets them, except to the players themselves, as long as you get them collectively.
Brandon Vogel's with us, Hail Varsity managing editor at hailvarsity.com magazine, and of course the website. Find Vogues on Twitter at Brandon L. Vogel. Vogues, what are you working on this weekend? Sounds like there's some stories in the hopper here for Big Red fans as we gear up here towards Ireland.
Yeah. So tomorrow we'll have number 3 on our most intriguing Huskers list. It is not a player. If you are listening carefully, you may know who I ended up writing that about for tomorrow. But I think it's the definition of intriguing. Like I said, going to put out a Sioux Line watch list here shortly. So that'll be coming early in the week, and then have some recruiting stuff next week as well.
All right. Vogues, thanks for having a cup of coffee with us this morning, part of a special Roadshow Saturday. Appreciate you, brother, and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks. You too, guys.
There he is, Brandon Vogel with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine. Weekend edition here, tee off for Treasures Golf Classic. The golfers are on the path to not only have a great time, but raise funds for Tee Off for Treasures. Can log on Tyson'sTreasureChest.org to find out more information. We'll step away and call a timeout. The Iron Horse is coming up real quick. We want to send birthday wishes to the best guy out there, but an incredible coach over at Lincoln Southwest, Tim Berda. Timmy B, we love you, and you're a heck of a fisherman as well. Timmy B is celebrating birthday number 49 today. 49 again. It's been 49 for a few years in a row, but Tim Berda is blowing out some candles. It may be ice cream cake, and there may be some Busch Latte in the fridge. A timeout. Gary Sharp's on the way. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcasts are just part of what we do at Hail Varsity. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor. I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we do, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Early to rise with Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Here's Chris Schmidt and Mark Cranack.
Back with you. It is Tee Off for Treasures, the 9th annual Tyson's Treasure Chest Golf Classic here out at Woodland Hills. Chris Schmidt and Will Wilson. Mark Cranack on assignment. It is state baseball for Little Cranack. Best wishes to those guys. Elijah Herbal on assignment out in Colorado. Do your own math there on that. I got an email in from Iowa Russ making fun of my rejoin. So he said Tim Berda's 49 years again. It's like I'm in my 30s, right? I've not been in my 30s for a while. But the rejoin big voice guy says, well, He's in his 30s. I'm going to keep running with that. We say hi to the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp. He joins us to talk some college football. Sharpie, good to spend time with you, bud. How are we?
Hey, good morning, Schmitty. I always like when Kranick has the state tournament for his little kids for baseball. It's the Nebraska state tournament, and they go to Iowa to play.
Brother, you're not kidding. Now, there is the... I don't know who the city planner is in Council Bluffs, but there was a juice bar a foul ball away from one of the ball fields we played at for state tournament baseball in Council Bluffs one year. So the moral of the story is Mama was able to go do her shift after Carson got done pitching.
Are juice bars still a thing?
Well, maybe it wasn't a juice bar. I did not explore. But I asked if I could.
For journalistic purposes only.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we just got to see what this is. Is this just a good old bar, or is there more that meets the eye here? Gary Sharp's with us. But, yeah, you're preaching to the choir. My big question to you, Sharpie, is can you make some calls to your friends in Lincoln and get us a West Side replica, because we're playing Legion Ball at West Side this afternoon, and I mean, just an incredible field. We were at Millard North earlier this week, and there's some decent choices in Lincoln, but everywhere I go in Omaha, there's turf infield, and there's a canopy so old man sun doesn't beat you down. It's just wonderful making the trek up I-80 for baseball. We need about 7 of these in Lincoln.
Well, you know, I've talked a long time about the investment in youth facilities and in high school facilities in this town. And you're right, it is impressive. You know, people, that's a big passion. It's very, very, should I say, competitive in Omaha, where it's the youth sports or high school sports. And so it almost becomes an arms race.
It's almost, it's like the SEC and the Big Ten, right? I love it. We look at some college football, Gary, and you know we're 42 days away from kickoff in Ireland. We spent some time talking with Vogel about the defensive line and sacks, hurries, hits, all that stuff. And to his point, you know, the Sioux line, can you have a couple of guys put up season numbers with what Sioux put up against Texas in the Big 12 championship game? And I see this stat on Twitter about 3 or 4 times a year where Sioux outperformed major college football programs' entire season output by their defensive line. That's how good 09 was for him. I want to go to the wide receiver side of things here, and really enjoyed Mickey Joseph this week. And a thought from you here, Sharpie, we need to know where it can be distributed here. I thought Mickey was pretty forthcoming with where some guys are at in this off season as they get ready for fall camp. I didn't hear a ton about Omar Manning. Should I panic about that, or what's your read? Is Omar locked in and ready to go? What are you hearing?
Well, I think that was one of the big takeaways from Mickey's discussion on the radio the other night, is he didn't mention Omar Manning. Now, Omar Manning is going to play. Mm-hmm. He's in the top 6. How much he's going to play is all about him. You know, you can't, and Mickey has a line, and I'm a little bit paraphrasing here, of you can't use something you don't know about. And, you know, sometimes I think Omar, you know, it seems like it's always something. And I know he's battled some things, but at some point you have to let your ability take over and grind and do the things that are needed in that room, because you have a wide receiver coach that's holding you accountable, that has a standard, that sees something in you. But if you don't reach that standard, you're not going to find yourself on the football field. That's why a Trey Palmer is like a Pied Piper. Here's a guy that's been around Mickey, that's been around NFL wide receivers, and he knows what it takes to get on the field and the grind every single day. So hopefully that trickles down to the rest of the wide receivers. But the thing to keep in mind about the wide receivers, and there's a lot of excitement because Mickey is coaching him, and you've got a Trey Palmer and you've got a Garcia Castaneda, you know, guys that you haven't seen before, Marcus Washington, they haven't caught a lot of footballs. So this is going to be new to them. Can Trey Palmer make the jump from catching 30-plus passes at LSU to possibly 55 to 60? But it's a room that's got some options in it. It's got Brody Belt in it as well, who is very versatile. And that's not just blowing smoke to say his name. They legitimately like him. And you're going to see him in situations this year that make sense, maybe compared to the last couple of years that he's played football at Nebraska. I like the wide receiver room, but they all have to make that jump. But Omar Manning is going to play. I don't know that he's in the top 3, though.
And again, to your point, that is up to him. Gary Sharp's with us here, Hail Varsity Radio, weekend edition, out at Woodland Hills, as it is the Tee-Off for Treasures 9th Annual Golf Classic. Sharpie, with Mickey and his standard, he is very clear. He is very good at communicating. Here is what you need to do to be successful, and do it every day to keep your job. I love that transparency. What do you feel about a couple more guys? We talked Omar here. What's your takeaway here with a guy like Oliver Martin? Is he somebody that can have more Illinois-type performances this year? And is Martin a guy that has just battled some confidence issues along with injuries? Is that's what's kept him from hitting the ceiling?
Well, and he's also, he's been at 3 programs. He's had numerous wide receiver coaches. He's had numerous quarterbacks. I think he's somebody that could be very steady for you. If he gives you 3 to 4 catches a game and maybe a little bit more, yeah, there is no doubt he can perform like he did on week 0 last year. And he's in the mix. He's going to be in that second group. Mickey will play probably 7 to 8 wide receivers and have faith in 9. So Oliver Martin will be in that second group. But again, this will be about, if you perform, you're going to play more. And I think you'll see that at all the positions that have new position coaches. If you perform, you're going to play. If you don't perform, we have recruited and coached ourselves into options where you're not going to play, because they can't wait a long time this year, as you know, Schmitty. I mean, the leash on some guys is going to be awful short if they're not up to the standards that are required by that position coach.
Mickey touched on talent and culture needing to change. I don't want to wear you out with a culture question here, but your read into the wide receiver room, what was the culture in the wide receiver room before Mickey got here?
Well, you got to remember, wide receivers, and Mickey is perfect to coach them. You got to think a little bit different. They can be divas. They can be out there. They like to showboat, all of that kind of stuff. So you got to, as a position coach, almost match that. And I think that's why Mickey is really, really good at building relationships with wide receiver-type players, building relationships with his room. I think when he talks about culture, I think what happened last year with Matt Lubick in that room is there was not a ton of respect for Lubick, and he maybe didn't fully hold them accountable or let them know where they stood on a daily basis. And so I think it got kind of sideways in the communication, and there's a complete difference when you have Mickey in that room, because all those guys know where they stand. He's not blowing smoke. He doesn't go on the radio and say something different that he's not saying in front of your face, in front of the room. And I think that will benefit some guys in there with some structure and just knowing what they have to do to play and what it looks like to be able to even get on the field on a daily basis.
Few minutes here. Gary Sharp with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Tee-Off for Treasures, 9th Annual Golf Classic, as we are out here at Woodland Hills. Will Wilson back in our studio. Sharpie, a bigger picture here as we get ready for Indy. Nebraska will kick things off, lead things off that Tuesday morning at Lucas Oil. Excited to be up there for that. What's the sense and vibe you're getting? We know the pressure and the expectation. Trev had a good sit-down with our friend Mitch Sherman this week in The Athletic. Pretty straightforward with expectations in the performance business. All those talking points that, it's a question. How do you think Nebraska's heading into this? Are they excited energy, or is there just nervousness because of the need to perform, that October 1st date that looms, the review that took place, the restructuring that went on? How is the head man and staff handling this going in?
Well, I think everyone is cognizant of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
You can't avoid it. Thomas Fedoni, basically said last week, if we know that if we don't win, coach is going to get fired. So they're aware of what they have to do. I think this has been a good offseason for Nebraska because it's been pretty quiet. There hasn't been, the head coach hasn't spoken. I don't think since the spring game, radio appearance one time. So it's been quiet. I mean, look at this could have, and I brought this up last week. O'Shawn Mathis. Anybody talking about him? We talked about him for a lot back in May, but he has been very, very quiet this offseason. And I think Nebraska as a whole has been quiet, and that's good. I mean, they know what's in front of them. You don't have to sugarcoat it. They know that they have to be better, and they have to do things that they haven't done in the first 4 years to be where they want to be. And I think guys, they like where they're at, but there's a lot of unknowns going into the season that you're not going to know for 42 days. And once you get there, then things will start to make sense. But there's a lot of moving pieces that have to come together. That's why I think when Nebraska opens camp in a couple of weeks, they can't have any bad days. They got to hit the ground running because it's going to be quirky to play that first game where they're playing it. And remember, you don't get an off weekend. You come back and you play right away, and the season unfolds. So I think they're ready to go. I think this is, I don't know how much more they can do to the roster. They like where the roster is at, but there are guys that are great unknown, and then there are guys that are returning that, of course, have to be better than they were last year.
Gary Sharp's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Sharp, you're going to switch gears. Your thoughts on Tiger's walk-on 18 yesterday? It's an incredible tournament, the Open, and we'll see who can take charge here day 3. But what a tribute to Tiger, and I know you followed Tiger quite a while.
It's one of those sentimental things. I mean, when you see Tiger get emotional, a guy that growing up, didn't show any emotion whatsoever. He was lethal. That was a guy that's 46 years old, that is past his prime, and he's playing a sport which he still enjoys, but he can't compete like he used to. And I think it hit him all at once in that special place. And that's one of the cool things about sports. We recognize greatness, and Tiger, no doubt, is great. Do we ever want to see him walk away? No, but we know that the time is coming. And we may not see him again until the Masters, and that is probably fine. And you have to think in your head, what's it going to look like when it's finally over? But we've all been able to watch him in his prime, an unbelievable player, and what he has meant to that sport and what he has meant in the impact outside of his sport. But that was cool yesterday. Everybody had to kind of stop and go, wow. And I'm glad he took it in. I think you saw the emotion of his entire career come together at that point. And I'm glad people at that course, the home of golf, they recognize Tiger Woods. So, it's now it shifts to, could this be a Rory against the live golfers, which is an interesting storyline. But it's, this is one of my favorite majors, and especially when you play at the old course, and especially when you have early morning TV on that has live sports.
It is good. Gary Sharp with us, a weekend edition Hail Varsity Radio. 9th annual tee-off for treasures out here at Woodland Hills. And Tyson's TreasureChest.org if you want to find out more and donate. Sharpie will get you out, but your connections in Florida run deep. Your thought right now on either conversations or timeline here with the U in Florida State in the SEC, what do you believe?
I don't think it's going to happen. If you're looking at the SEC, they're pretty good, 16 right now. And if you look at the way they have expanded, it's a Southern brand. Moves make sense. I know Florida State would like to get out, but let's be honest. ACC would be in a better spot if Florida State and Miami were better in football. I don't see it. I think, really the only thing right now that we're all waiting on is Notre Dame. We've kind of taken a pause, which happens. You add, you shift the alignment, and everybody waits. And that's what we're doing. We're waiting for Notre Dame, and, we're waiting for a TV contract and whatever happens. But I do believe when the SEC says they're comfortable at 16, they'll stay at 16. Remember, the ACC and ESPN have a relationship. ESPN and the SEC have a relationship. So why would the ESPN want to break up the ACC? But keep an eye on it. Nobody had pegged UCLA and USC to make the move to the Big Ten.
Are we roadieing out to that first game in the city of Troy? Are you gonna make that happen? Any game. I tell you, if Nebraska gets in a pod with the two Los Angeles schools, and one year they have one team at home and the other they're on the road, there will be a large contingent every year, either at the Coliseum
or at the Rose Bowl of Nebraska fans. There just will. I mean, that's a benefit for the Nebraska fans that live on the West Coast. And every time we've gone out to the West Coast, you've seen the turnout by Nebraska. I don't know. The scheduling will be fascinating on what's going to happen with how it's all going to work and how many, who's going to get the disadvantage or the advantage of playing UCLA or USC at a big time of day.
I can see it now. The Sharpie World Tour, the layover in Vegas, and then the pregame experience, the game, and then Sunset on a Saturday night with Gary Sharp.
Throw in Sunset Boulevard, we'll be fine.
That's what I meant. Sunset Boulevard after a noon kick. Sharpie, enjoy your weekend, bud. Thanks for jumping on with us.
Hey, thanks, Smitty. Enjoy that great event you're at the golf course.
Appreciate you, brother. There he is, Gary Sharp with us, the Iron Horse. And we are about ready to wrap up shop. We'll be back on Monday at 4 for Hail Varsity Radio. Good stuff from Gary Sharp. JP from 96 Kicks hopped on in his association with Tyson's treasure chest, so near and dear, along with Jeremiaha and Emma Sirles and what they do, and just a great experience to be out here this morning here at Woodland Hills as we are here for the 9th annual Tyson's Treasure Chest Tee-Off for Treasures. You can log on, tysonstreasurechest.org, and find out more, and much love and support to Austin and Liz Chambers as we remember Tyson and what they do every year, and that is put this golf tournament together and fundraise so toys and tablets and blankets can be purchased to put in a toy chest to be given and donated to cancer children's hospitals all across the country. Willie J., what's on the docket for you before we say goodbye here? You going to find your way to the golf course this weekend, or is it just still you're in wait-and-see mode for the weekend?
Yeah, I'm going to head home, take a little nap before 4 o'clock. I got a bartend tonight, so just kind of resting and, just hanging out, man. What about you? I know you got baseball coming up.
Baseball, and then I'm going to go crash a place called El Paso later,
okay.
I think is what I'm thinking about. But doubleheader and maybe get some golf lined up for tomorrow. Willie J., you're awesome, brother. Appreciate you. Take care. We'll be back at you Monday with Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
A Hurrdat Media Production.